Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So we talked about Point of No Return yesterday. That is episode 11 from season 3 of The Bad Batch. We did our 7 takeaway breakdown episode, but as I was doing that, I was thinking about the episode and going, what exactly is a point of no return about this? Like, that wasn't necessarily obvious immediately, at least from the events of the episode. So I did what I usually do in circumstances like this, which is, go to Google and just type point of no return and see what happens. Turns out that the dictionary definition of point of no return often refers to airplanes and aviation as its initial situation. Like, the phrase is derived from the idea that a plane no longer has enough fuel to go back to its original destination, that it has to, either get to where it's going or land somewhere in between here and there. But since then, it's taken on more of the philosophical idea of being a point at which, like, you cannot turn back, you cannot reverse course, you cannot undo what it was that you were doing. There's only one way forward. So when we look at the events of the Point of No Return episode, it seems pretty clear that the path that the Bad Batch is on leads inexorably to Tantus, that there is no avoiding it, there is no turning away from it. They have to go to Tantus and deal with whatever is happening there. Which then made me realize that there was a world where the Bad Batch might have just said the heck with it to Tantus. Like, once they got Omega back, they had the option to just say, okay, we're done. In fact, the whole thing with Pabu was supposed to be a situation where they possibly had found a place that they could call home, that they could leave the war behind, that they could settle in and live the rest of their days in something resembling peace. Granted, they chose not to do that, and a lot of that had to do with Omega's urging about trying to find Tantus because their clone brothers were being held captive there. But then you had the events of that first doubleheader that we got in the season, where Rex's base on Teth was overrun and a lot of the clones that were there were killed. And then you had the Asajj Ventress episode where she shows up and says, if I can find you, then somebody else is going to find you, and that puts Pabu in jeopardy. And so we put the Bad Batch in a position where they're on the run, and it seems like they're not necessarily in a position to continue to scout for Tantus or to do anything like that. It's just like, okay, at some point we're just going to have to let it go because we can only take care of ourselves. We're having trouble taking care of anyone else, and the ultimate situation is that we don't want to risk Omega. That's, the Bad Batch's way of thinking. But consistently, that has never been Omega's way of thinking, and it comes to the fore again when she and Crosshair are talking about, what are they going to do? The Empire is destroyed anyway off the planet. Hunter seems to have, fallen into the ocean, may or may not have survived. There's no way they're going to escape, and the Empire is just going to burn everybody's houses down and kill everybody on that, ocean little city until they get to Omega. And Omega says, well, I'm going to turn myself in. Crosshair doesn't want to do that, but Omega's response is that she is just a small part of the mission. She's reminding Crosshair that it isn't just about her, even though the members of the Bad Batch have been pretty much focused on just making sure it's about her. She sees it as it is about all of the clones, and this is yet another action where she's making it about, that entire family. So she tells Crosshair to focus on the bigger mission, and then she sets up the situation where he has no choice, and Wrecker and Hunter will have no choice, and neither will any of the other clones. They have to come to Tantus. They have to be part of the mission to free not just Omega, but all of the clones who are being held prisoner. Which kind of puts you in mind of Darth Vader talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, saying escape is not his plan. When Omega gets to Tantus, escape will not be her plan. And when Emery Carr comes to her and says, I can't believe you're back and we got to get you out of here, it's not going to be, we got to get me out of here. It's, we got to get everybody out of here, and the only way that's going to happen is if you help me get Rex and Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshair and the entire cavalry to Tantus to be able to get us all And I'm using cavalry specifically because that is also the episode title for the final episode of the series. It's The Cavalry Has Arrived. So yeah, I have a feeling that's going to be arriving in Tantus, and that's the way that Omega has kind of forced the hand of everyone, forced them into this point of no return, where the only result of this is that everybody's going to Tantus. So that's what I've got for you on my meditations about why this episode was called Point of No Return, and that is going to do it for our deep dive episode look at that episode 11 from season 3 of The Bad Batch. It's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please, it would be so helpful if you just do a couple of small things: a rating or review if you haven't done it, a subscribe or a like or a follow or a join if you haven't done that, telling a few friends that you know that this Daily Dose of Star Wars Joy exists for them, and tell them again. Sometimes people need to hear it a second or third time, you know. And you can even help support the production and distribution of this one-man show with your help at patreon.com/SW7X7. Those sevens are numbers, so it's SW, the number 7, the letter X, and the number 7 over at patreon.com. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyrighted by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.